City Council and representative on the audit.
Lou Lassiter, City Auditor.
Ron McCoy, Internal Audit Manager. Rochelle Carter, City Auditor. Tony Noel, City Auditor's Office.
Leanne Castro, City Auditor's Office.
Brett, City Auditor's Office. Lee Cheney, Audit Committee, CPA member.
Craig Johnson, Office of the Inspector General.
Bob Fidel, Deputy Chief Administrative Officer.
April Mingham, DPU.
Daniel Jones, City Auditor's Office. Carol Finke, City Auditor's Office.
Sheila, you want to introduce yourself?
Certainly, Sheila White, Director of Finance.
And I see that we have Don Coles here virtually.
Yes, pleasure to be with you. Thank you. I'm a citizen member of the Audit Committee.
We have.
And Bobby,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Bobby Vincent, Director of Public Works.
Hey, Bobby. Okay, I'm not sure how many folks, it looks like we have a number of people online. We won't go through all those names. We have a new member of the audit staff here. Lou, would you introduce them to the audience?
Good afternoon. We have one with us here and another new staff member that has joined us, and they both started on the same day, coincidentally. I'd like to introduce Daryl Finke. He's a new senior auditor with our staff that worked as a senior auditor previously for the city of Raleigh. He's come a little bit north from North Carolina. And a little bit east, prior to that, he worked for the city and county of Denver and their auditor office as well. He had several audit positions in the state of Texas and served in the United States Navy. He's a graduate of University of Nebraska and a certified government audit professional. So, welcome, Daryl. And Selma Thomas, who couldn't be with us today, also started. She's an auditor that joins our team that previously worked in the financial regulatory technician in the finance department. So we stole one from Sheila's team, but it's all one team. And she also previously worked for the Redevelopment Housing Authority and the State Department of Corrections, as well as PNC Bank. She's a graduate from the Delaware State University. So we're so glad to finally get a couple of these audit positions filled.
You now have a full staff, is that correct?
The only position that's out there is Lily's from her retirement, which is yes.
Carol, welcome. We're delighted to have you here, and look forward to meeting the others. The minutes were circulated earlier. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes that were circulated? Do I hear a motion that the minutes be approved?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. External auditor, external audit update, Greg Bussing. Greg, I think you're on the line, right?
I'm here.
Okay, would you please bring us up to date on where we are?
Okay. I guess I got a couple things to cover with you. One is I'll give you an update on where we stand on the 2022 audit, and then I wanted to circle back on the fiscal year 21 single audit that we provided a draft to management. So I'll start with the 22 audit just so I'll let you know how things are going so far for this year. So far for this year, we've started our preliminary field work a while back with the city. We've completed our preliminary risk assessment. Some of our planning work is done. IT review is ongoing. Walkthroughs and internal control testing is every key area is ongoing. We've got some of that testing complete, but we have still some we're wrapping up. We've been talking with internal audit about the plan for this year. Some preliminary discussions are basically to have them perform similar work this year to what they've done in the past. We were just waiting to finish the single audit before we really got going full blown there. Field work is scheduled to begin next week. So we should be getting trial balances from them. We're open by Friday for the key areas, and then we'll be able to get started in earnest next week. As far as deliverables for fiscal year 22, we do have a VRS examination report that's due to the state on 10/1. So that's being, and that's going through our quality control review right now. We think that'll go out on time. The single audit report for fiscal year 2021 is due September 30th, and that's also that's also in quality control review. So we think that'll go out on time too. They'll just come down the wire on that one. But so that's where we stand with the 22 audit, and then the single audit as far as the deliverable for fiscal year 2021. So then within the draft of the report, and I think it was shared with you, but you probably got it late yesterday or early this morning. So we went through the internal control over the financial statement findings at the last meeting. And then you had questioned management about some of the follow-up. So that's one of the things that we will follow up on in this year's engagement, is where the status of things from last year. And we did have two findings as a result of the single audit. One is related to the Emergency Solution Grants program. And that had to do with delayed payments to subrecipients. Payments were actually made, but it wasn't made within 30 days. And then for the coronavirus relief funds, or CRF, I'll call them as we go through, we did have two reports that they were submitted on time, but there was lack of documented review for that. And within the government auditing standards internal control world is, the standard is if the control is not documented, no evidence of performance, then technically it didn't occur. So we have to note that as an exception. And then there was one finding related to the Auditor of Public Accounts review that was done. And that's where Lou's group helps us, and they had a finding detailed related to social services, and it was a repeat of the prior year finding for the most part. And there's detail in the draft. I won't go through all this with you because a lot of it's a repeat from prior year. But management's taking corrective action, they think, for this year, and we'll follow up as part of this year's engagement.
So these issues are all spelled out in the single audit report, or is it in the
Yes.
internal controls letter? The single audit report.
Correct.
I think since we haven't had a chance to look at that, I hope you'll be prepared at our next meeting to answer any questions that members of the committee have after they review that document.
Certainly.
All right, and as I understand it, the single audit report is due by September the 30th. That is the
Correct.
extension date. And
Correct.
do I understand that that is going to be met?
Yes.
All right, any other questions of Mr. Bussey? Okay, thank you very much, Greg. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's turn, if we could, to the audit reports. First is the DPU contract compliance. Yolanda and Leanne.
All right, so good afternoon, everyone. This audit was scheduled as part of our FY22 audit plan. First, I'd like to thank the Department of Utilities Director, as well as the water distribution staff, for the cooperation and assistance throughout this audit. I'd also like to thank our auditors, Dan and Andy, for their hard work on this engagement. So we looked at the water leak repairs and meter installation contract. Our objective was to test for internal controls regarding the monitoring of the quality of work, as well as compliance with the terms and conditions of the contract. Our scope included the expenses, inspections, repairs, actions related to this contract for the 18 months ending December 31st, 2021, and the current environment. This contract was executed in 2019, and the city is currently on the first contract renewal. Contract expenses total approximately $6.9 million during the audit scope. The contract included contracted services for water and main leak investigations and repairs, meter installations, water service installations and retirements, as well as fire hydrants inspections, installations, and replacements. DPU maintains over 1,200 miles of water lines and approximately 6,500 fire hydrants in the city. During the audit scope, there were 3 DPU inspectors assigned to monitor the contractor's work to ensure compliance with the technical specifications of the contract. Work under this contract is either paid as a unit item or a forced account. Unit items are fixed amounts, and they're paid regardless of how long it takes to complete a repair. whereas forced accounts are paid hourly for personnel during these benefits. I will now turn the presentation over to Leanne to discuss the audit observations.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Well, 12, 63 potential duplicate payments totaling approximately $241,000 were tested and no duplicates were identified. Additionally, completed jobs data was analyzed for addresses with multiple service calls to determine if the city was charged more than once for work that should have been covered under warranty. 84 addresses had multiple calls and 20 were tested, and no instances were noted where DPU paid more than once for service or repairs that should have been under warranty. I'm now going to opportunities for improvement. Timeliness of hydrant inspections. The American Water Works Association recommends that hydrants be inspected annually. However, DPU's goal is to inspect each hydrant at least every 24 months. We analyzed hydrant inspection data from the Geographical Information System for 5,503 hydrants to determine if they were inspected timely for DPU's goal. 35% of the inspections were not inspected within 24 months. Of those 35%, a third were more than 6 months past due. Processes and procedures were not in place to properly administer the hydrant inspection program. Hydrants were not inspected based on the last inspection date, and there was no reconciliation process in place to ensure that all the hydrants were inspected timely. Also, a complete centralized inspection and maintenance history for the hydrants was not readily available. Therefore, there was a lack of visibility on the hydrants that needed inspections. Lateral valve inspections. Lateral valves were not exercised during the hydrant inspections. However, exercising these valves is a critical portion of the inspection process. The valve controls the hydrants and provides a means for the city to isolate the hydrant if there are issues. And it also affects the flow of water at the hydrant. The contractor cannot exercise its valves unless they are under the supervision of a trained city employee. City staff were not always with the contractor during the audit scope. As such, the valves were not exercised. For DPU staff, a city employee was permanently assigned to accompany the contractor in early May of this year. However, we could not confirm that the valves were being exercised now, as the valve portion of the inspection forms were not completed in a sample of forms that we reviewed. DPU management did advise that mitigating controls are in place during routine inspections and can identify if the lateral valve is not functioning properly. Fire hydrant replacements. DPU's goal is to repair fire hydrants within 48 hours of being taken out of service when the parts are available. If there are utility markings required, it could take up to 3 days for the markings to be completed, and then the replacements are scheduled. There are approximately 6,500 active fire hydrants in the city. 113 of them were marked out of service during our audit scope, and we tested 20 and noted that 70% were not put back into service within 48 hours. 5% was still out of service as of June 2022, but this hydrant has been out of service awaiting a main replacement. Could not conclude on the timeliness of the other 25% due to a lack of documentation. We did speak to fire department staff, and they did let us know that the fire engine companies are aware of any out of service hydrants, and they are able to access the surrounding hydrants. Billing process and contract compliance. 31 invoices totaling approximately $642,000 were tested for compliance with the contract rates. The billed work and quantities did not match the supporting documentation for 39% of reviewed invoices, with discrepancies that went both ways. Incorrect rates were billed for 13% of the invoices we tested, resulting in overpayments totaling approximately $8,700. DPU identified and recouped approximately $2,500 of the overpayment prior to the audit. Some of the contract language was unclear and subject to interpretation, which could lead to inconsistent billing. There were other opportunities for improvement related to the billing process that are further discussed in the report. Automation of inspection documentation. An opportunity for improvement exists by automating the inspection documentation progress that would decrease the redundancy in tracking the completed work and decrease the risk of clerical errors during data entry. Materials tracking. City provided materials to the contractor to complete the work when it was available. DPU did not have a process in place to track the inventory once it was issued to the contractor. The cost of materials used for jobs under this contract cannot be readily identified. Assistant superintendent. DPU uses a retired city employee that currently works for the contractor to complete various tasks that fall outside the scope of work for this particular contract. Per DPU staff, the contractor's employee was brought in to fill a void due to high turnover and loss of institutional knowledge when the water division was restructured. However, this may not be the most cost-effective method, as pay for the contract employee is more than the city would pay for a city employee, including fringe benefits. Policies and procedures. There were no written policies and procedures in place to guide and aid the inspectors in carrying out their job duties. Without adequate guidance, employees may not consistently, efficiently, and effectively carry out their job duties and meet management expectations. The contract requirements may be inconsistently interpreted by different inspectors, resulting in non-compliance and billing discrepancies. In conclusion, we issued 16 recommendations with 100% concurrence and implementation dates through December 2023. 800 hours were budgeted in the fiscal year 2022 audit plan. Hours were increased to 1,220 hours after planning, and the final time spent was 1,450 hours. Questions?
Before we get to the questions, Ms. Mayo, I'm still seeing you here today. Do you or one of your folks have any comments that you want to make on the hours before we get to the questions from the committee?
I think what's important for me, being on DPU, I think what's important for me was great working with the auditor team on this. Being new in this role, it gave me an insight to the things we need to change and the things we need to work on. One thing that came to light for me was the importance of reestablishing a lot of the meetings that we used to have with the fire department to ensure that their needs are being met when there isn't a hydrant out of service. I think I did hear the auditor say that it was confirmed that they are able to draw from redundancy throughout the city. So that's a positive. But I think also too, with so much automation with pre-pandemic and post-pandemic staffing levels, it's also an opportunity for us to continue to dig into those synergies and figure out how we can continue to support one another in that space. So I'm looking at it from a different eye in terms of managing the work and the workload. So it was good for me to really dig into these details and these numbers to kind of understand where we need to go.
Either committees have any, members have any questions or comments? Questions?
Thank you all for your work, and thank you, Ms. Bingham, for your comments. I think I'm a little concerned about renewing the contract, just seeing the problems that have come up during this audit, because usually we engage with an outside contractor to make things easier for the city, because we don't have the capacity internally to do certain things. And it just doesn't seem like it's, I mean, it's work, but it doesn't seem like seems like there's a lot of room for improvement with the work that is being done per the contract and outside the contract. So maybe this is a discussion in a different forum, but that would be my feedback is, since this audit was about a specific contract and work that we have to do as a city, does it really make sense to renew that contract? I would just worry about getting the same level of work.
Any other questions or comments? Don Coles, anything from you?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
CEO with the assistant superintendent who was a former staff person. And so, and this may speak some to Ms. Nye's comment, but it seems as if there might be opportunity for cost saving, considering that, if I understood correctly from our briefing, it's pretty significant. And so I think we really should look at that opportunity as well. And that may, or I'm not, I think with this scenario, we really just need to look at in terms of cost savings. And I'm not sure this person is no longer employed with us, if I understand correctly. And so, did he retire? Okay. I would just say we really need to take a look at what we're scheduling in this role this month.
One of the things that jumped out to me relates to the fire hydrant inspections. I believe I remember from the report that the national standard is to inspect fire hydrants every 12 months. Did I get that right?
That was the guidance from the American Water Works. It's not a, I don't think it's a hard.
It's not a hard,
guidance.
it's recommended.
But that is the guidance. And the city has inspection routine that is twice that at 24 months. And even with that, more than 30% of the inspections are over 24 months. That seems to me that's an area of real concern given the fire issues in an older city like Richmond. And I really do hope that the new work and the new job, you can focus on that and improve the inspection frequency.
Duly noted, and I think we confirmed earlier this week that the ISO rating is very fair, if not comparable to where we should, above the level we should be. So we're comfortable with that, but I do agree that, you know, if we look at the 6,500 hydrants that we have, that would give us about a little over 3,200 a year to inspect. With staffing levels as they are pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, we need to figure out how we can create a great balance.
Fair enough. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of the committee? Yes, please.
The contract, do they charge you for every inspection they do, or is it a flat fee they're paying? I mean, we're not getting charged for inspections that aren't being done.
It's charged per inspection.
Okay.
Okay, no further comments or questions? Let's move on to the graffiti report. Brett?
Thank you, Mr. So this audit, the DPW graffiti removal audit, was a part of the fiscal year 22 audit plan. We'd first like to thank DPW and their team, that goes out and does graffiti, for letting us shadow them, observe the process, and get an understanding of what they do. I'd also like to thank Tony and Chastity in our office that worked on the audit. So the objective of the audit was to evaluate the effectiveness and efficiency of the city's graffiti education, outreach, enforcement, and abatement program. The scope of the audit covered graffiti removal during the 12 months ended fiscal year 22 and June 2022. So Richmond City Code actually authorizes the city to perform graffiti abatements or contract out the removal or repair of the defacement for all graffiti that is visible from the public right of way.
Both public and private, correct?
Yes, anything that's visible from the public right of way. Public or private. And DPW Surface Cleaning Division is actually responsible for moving this graffiti. Just to give a little background, there's really three main components of the program. There's prevention, abatement, and enforcement. And prevention really includes any form of awareness, outreach programs, reaching out and working with schools, neighborhood involvement. And as Tony pointed out in the presentation, there was not a prevention program in place during the scope of the audit. And abatements, like you said, public and private, performed. Fiscal year 22, there were a little over 1,000 abatements performed by the department. And their abatements are tracked currently using three methods: a system called RBA 311, an Excel spreadsheet, as well as CityWorks. And currently, the last piece is enforcement. DPW is currently not performing this piece. It's basically ending at the abatement process, which Tony will go over. Now I will turn it over to Tony for the rest of the presentation.
Thank you. What works well? Graffiti removal. The auditors observed graffiti removals in the field with DPW staff, noting that the process was completed effectively, as shown in these pictures. However, prior to the close of this audit, this hotspot was tagged once again, which poses continuous work for DPW. Graffiti expenditures. The auditors reviewed approximately 35,000 graffiti-related expenditures for appropriateness, noting that all observed expenditures were appropriate. Also, we would like to note the citizens were very appreciative of the graffiti staff's work and would regularly praise them in the field. What needs improvement? Enforcement. DPW does not abate graffiti on private property if the owner does not comply as allowed by city code. City code allows DPW to abate graffiti on all property. However, DPW is not enforcing the code. As a result, private neighborhoods and businesses are left with graffiti indefinitely, leading to dissatisfied neighbors, and blight. As noted in many of these pictures, the graffiti continues to grow. Private property waivers. DPW does not consistently maintain waivers for private property abatements. We've requested completed waivers for 10 private property abatement jobs, and 80% of the abatements reviewed did not have private property waivers on file.
I'm sorry, does that mean if you don't have a waiver that the property is not abated?
No, they have to maintain the waivers on file that say the owner gave permission to DPW to go out and fill the file. And so those weren't being maintained.
But yes, but you cannot do a private property abatement unless you have the waiver.
Yes.
Or unless you subsequently cite them and enforce them.
I understand that. I'm talking about practice today.
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Okay, just fine. Budget. There's no established budget. As of May 2022, DPW had over 194,000 total expenditures. Supplies, labor, and the equipment to abate graffiti are not being tracked per job. Without a documented budget, it is difficult to determine if these graffiti-related expenses are reasonable. Program awareness, prevention, and interdepartmental collaboration. Collaborative efforts with other departments, community stakeholders, prevention, and outreach all need improvement. The city funds a program that offers reimbursement for graffiti removal, a job that DPW offers for free to citizens. Also, code enforcement personnel in the field are not reporting graffiti instances to DPW. And a nonprofit, Venture Richmond, offers a private graffiti removal service in a specified area downtown, but does not work or communicate with DPW to abate these properties collectively. Performance. DPW doesn't have performance measures in place for staff or graffiti abatements. System of record. City Work is DPW's system of record. However, DPW is using an Excel spreadsheet as their main database instead of CityWorks. CityWorks has the following capabilities that DPW is not utilizing, like running reports on the work performed, documenting performed with pictures, tracking pre and post inspections, along with labor and material costs per job. We compared FY22 abatement jobs on the Excel spreadsheet against closed records on CityWorks, noting that 30 completed abatement jobs in CityWorks were not documented on the Excel spreadsheet. In conclusion, we issued 8 recommendations with 100% concurrence, implementation dates through July 2023. Time spent, this audit was on the FY 2022 audit plan for 800 hours. Budget after planning was 650 hours, actual hours is 617. Any questions?
Thank you. Again, do we have any comments from the Department of Public Works? Mr. Benson, I think I saw you on the line. Any comments on this before we get to questions?
Yes, good morning. Look, it's been a long day. I'm still in the morning time. Good afternoon, everyone. Bobby Vincent, Director of Public Works. Graffiti has certainly been one of those issues that is crime riddled, not just the city of Richmond, but just about every inner city across the United States of America, especially as we went through the bout with COVID, as well as through the riots, etc. So therefore, we did decide to put additional resources towards graffiti removal this year. And as the report indicated, we're already above 1,000 abatements this year. Last year, we ended the year at just over 900, and we're already over 1,000 this year. We just entered into September. So we are putting our best foot forward with regards to abatement. and records are being kept. Records are not being placed into CityWorks at this point in time because right now it's an easier method for those labor crew chiefs and equipment operators that are performing that duty to work on a more standardized spreadsheet until we're able to have additional staff in place to be able to handle things more in an electronic database format. So that's something that we're also working on as well. And the budget for graffiti is used through our state maintenance funds that we receive with regards to maintaining any and everything within the public right of way. So it's the same batch of funding that comes through with regards to dealing with potholes as well as sidewalks, trees, grass cutting, etc. Any and everything that's maintained within the public right of way is where we get our funding from in order to be able to maintain any type of an abatement program with regards to graffiti. The private property abatement is sort of a tough issue. That is something that we have taken more of an aggressive stance on more recently than we have in past years. And that stance has been to paint instead of trying to remove it through pressure washing because we don't want to cause damage to private property, whether the private property owner is responsible or not. Many of those private property owners who are responsive with us, it's a thin line between citing a property owner for something that someone else is committing a crime to on their property. That's kind of a tough, bittersweet pill that we have not made the attempt to swallow at this point in time, and just sticking with abatement to try to beautify our city as much as possible. But we certainly appreciate the report. We've taken note with regards to many of the questions and or comments that have been made in the report, and we're looking to try to do better. Even though we already are in the process of moving the arrow up, we know that we still have a ways to go in order to make it where we want it to be. So that's all what I have at this point in time, and I'm certainly willing to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Let me ask you a quick follow-up question, and I'll turn it over to other members of the committee. With respect to the recommendations concerning enforcement, that is sending out notice letters, 30-day letters. I really couldn't tell from your response whether you plan to begin doing that, working with the city attorney's office, for example, to devise a program to get that in place, or are you not planning to do that?
That is something that we plan to do. We tend to work with RPD. RPD still has some neighborhood enforcement officers that we work with on a frequent basis with regards to trying to talk to property owners and or get in contact with property owners, or working with PDR to try to do the exact same thing there. But many of the property owners, they're not around. They're out of town, or they're not easily attainable. So in instances where it is a situation where there is profanity or profane graffiti, we take the initiative and go ahead and remove that with or without any prior warning or notice to the property owner. And in instances where we can't get in contact with the property owner, we've also taken some initiative there and just painted it white or painted it gray, and then continued on with regards to our workload. So enforcement is a tough piece for the department here, because we would be enforcing it and or citing the property owner who is not necessarily directly responsible for the crime, other than the fact that their building is not occupied.
Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee?
Sorry, I always have questions. So what's the relationship between us and Venture Richmond and money they've gotten or getting for graffiti abatement?
Well, very good question, Councilperson Nye. How you doing today? Good to hear your voice and to see you digitally. What we're doing with regards to working with Lord have mercy, I forgot your question that quick. I shouldn't have complimented you.
Venture Richmond.
Venture Richmond, that's it. Okay, so Venture Richmond, as we all know, they have a very small pocket of the city that is in our immediate downtown area where we're trying to have entertainment and things of that nature. So since they already have Clean and Safe out there working, what we did was partner with them on some of the locations that was directly across the street from where they're trying to do economic or assist the city with regards to economic development. And so we've been working with them, and they've been working with Johnny on the spot in order to target some of those locations. And many of those locations have been tagged repeatedly, and they've been going in and removing it repeatedly as well. But we have been working with them on the location so that we don't have to go back and duplicate efforts. There has been some duplication of efforts, but for the most part, there haven't been any. And the duplication of efforts just mean that we're going out there and removing graffiti before they remove it. So they still have money in the coffer to be able to do more graffiti in the future.
Okay, so this is the first year we're doing this partnership with them, correct?
Yes, in this particular format, but we have been working with Venture obviously for quite some time with regards to graffiti removal. And we have some parking districts that have been set up that have chosen graffiti removal to be a part of the Clean and Safe program, which some of the Clean and Safe program also coincides with some of the Venture Richmond ventures. So we have been working with them in the past, and that's why we feel comfortable working with them now.
Okay, and then how is it, I mean, when we passed the budget, we just saw a lump sum that goes to them. Are they getting a specific amount for the graffiti removal, or is it all part of the Clean and Safe program?
The lump sum that we have been paying to Venture Richmond over the years has not been solely for graffiti removal. We have been working with them in recent this year with regards to potentially utilizing ARPA funds to be able to be transferred to Venture Richmond in order to help with regards to curtailing some of the graffiti. But we are meeting with staff, legal staff, to see if that's feasible. If that's not feasible, then that's something that we would just work through with regards to our regular DPW budget.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments on Mr. Benson?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
just, Mr. Vincent, just similarly, the communication between DPW and Venture to ensure that there is not duplication of effort. You did indicate that you're working through that, or did I miss?
No, there's no duplication of effort there. The duplication of effort would only exist if Venture had already paid somebody to go and remove a site, and they charged them for removing a location that we had already removed. And that's something that's not happening with regards to Venture in the city of Richmond. So Venture is inspecting
area that they are.
I'm sorry.
We have a very specific area that Venture focuses on, and then you have everything else.
Yes, ma'am. They focus on about a 20 or 40 square block area in the immediate downtown area, and the Department of Public Works takes care of the vast majority of the city.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much, Mr. Benson. We appreciate it.
Thank you all. Appreciate you.
The next item on the agenda is the APA comparative analysis. Brett, I think this is yours as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you again, Mr. Chair. So the APA comparative cost report analysis is an annual non-audit service that we perform in our office. This is the 5th year running that we've done this. Like the first thing, the finance department, we work with it every year to get this report completed. This is their data that they were utilizing to get the work done. And also, I'd like to thank Andy from our office that worked on it. So each year, localities with populations greater than 3,500 are required to submit to the state auditor of public accounts for the APA data on local government operations and enterprise activities. This data provides expenses for a wide array of service areas of local governments. It also covers revenues as well as sources for those revenues. And what we do annually is we use this data for the cost to compare against other localities that are relative benchmarks to our locality based off the services provided by larger, more urban areas. And the 6 that we typically compare against are Norfolk, Newport News, Hampton, Roanoke, Alexandria, and Arlington County. I'll now turn it over to Amy for the presentation.
Thank you, and good afternoon. As you can see, Richmond is third, Richmond in local revenue is per capita basis, third highest. Within our comparison after the 2 Northern Virginia localities, Arlington and Alexandria. The main driver of difference between Richmond and the 2 Northern Virginia localities is general property taxes, which can be seen in the second column. They both earn the 3,000 per capita, with all the other comparisons in the 1,000s for both 2020 and 2021. This chart is a breakdown of operating costs per category over the last 2 years. The following slides will show a breakdown and comparison for each of the 8 categories. For general government administration costs per capita, Richmond was second lowest. If we are looking at the 5-year trend table below, you may notice a decrease from FY17 to FY18. This would be attributed to the GRTC and GRCCA costs being double counted in the FY17 report.
So they were reported twice for the general government admin and in another area of so finance, after we identified that in the 17-18 time frame, corrected that and the reports moving to ABA.
As seen on this slide, education cost per capita is second lowest in 7 localities. However, as seen on the next slide, per student, we are the 4th highest of the 7. This may be due to the fact that the student population is smaller in the city. Public safety is one area that continues to trend higher than the other localities. The administration provided a detailed breakdown last year regarding potential reasons for this. That included call volume, diversity of calls, overtime, and the age of the vehicle fleet. Additionally, during this time frame, COVID played a factor of public safety as they were highly involved with the city's response. Health and welfare costs, 3rd highest. The increase could be attributed to the ongoing pandemic. For public works, Richmond ranked the highest of the 7. We believe one contributing factor for this is the CDTA fund received to address the city's aging infrastructure. Richmond also ranked highest of the 7 for community development. Community development costs are higher than other localities, primarily due to $72 million of the $108 million for this category being RRHA, and they have other revenues to offset expenses. Richmond is second lowest for parks and recs costs per capita. You may notice in the 5-year trend that the city is getting closer to the average per capita within compared localities. For debt per capita, Richmond ranked the highest of the 7 and well above the average of approximately $9,247. Richmond's enterprise activities are a primary reason debt per capita is higher, and this debt is supported by user fees. Additionally, enterprise activities such as gas and water also serve customers outside the city limits in Hanover, Chesterfield, and Henrico, which can be a factor for this cost. The table to the right shows general government debt service per capita to be in the middle of the range for this of the 7. And here we have the 5-year trend for general government debt service. In closing, this non-audit service report provides some high-level analysis for council and administration's use. For areas with the highest cost, we identified some of the cost drivers behind those figures. The ongoing pandemic, impacts some of the figures and should be noted when looking at the 5-year trend analysis charts. As noted by the APA, the report provides a uniform presentation of fiscal information. However, we caution users not to base conclusions solely on this report's data. Therefore, this information should not be used solely as an indicator of efficiency or performance without further analysis of the scope of services amongst those entities being ranked.
So, you know, one of the reasons we picked these as opposed to a Chesterfield is the roads are maintained in Chesterfield by VDOT. Whereas in these localities, including Arlington County, your public works takes care of the roads. So that's where we're talking, you know, we try to benchmark these against apples to apples types of communities. I do know this year on the public safety, when the COVID money came in, a chunk of that was processed through the fire department. And that's why some of that may have gone up this year. Because they got a good slug of that COVID money that wasn't just for the fire department, but for citywide efforts. We hope this provides some good information. I know when we first started this process, we're a little concerned about how low we were on Parks and Rec. And you can see the investments that the administration and council has made, try to move that bar to more in line with the city's peers. So I think it's kind of important to look at the trend rather than any one specific.
Yeah, I think this is the first time we've seen the 5-year trends taken, so it's very helpful to have that. Thank you. I have talked with Lou about this report. I mean, I think it's a very useful report. I hope the city council does it on. And one of the things that we have talked about is the possibility of putting some more auditor hours into the analysis of this, screw down harder on some of the differences that we see between Richmond and other localities, particularly when we're higher, and sometimes when we're lower. Make sure we fully understand, we and city council fully understand, you know, why these numbers are what they are. It's actually quite useful information. Yes, ma'am.
Just in terms of the debt per capita and, you know, appearing that it's disproportionate for Richmond, is some way having a tag there. That's Chesterfield and Lido customers in there as well, correct?
Right, we noted that in the report.
It's not.
Yes, this is debt.
Right.
So yes, the enterprise activities serve folks outside of the city.
Yeah.
But figuring out what that denominator might be, because I'm not so sure the gas customers are the same number as the water customers. So that's why we showed the general government tab. I want to Bob. Did I say that right or not?
No, you're right. Way the contracts are structured for water and wastewater, there's no way to normalize everything. But the gas customers pay their fair share on per customer basis.
Yeah. I just didn't want us to be deemed when they're more than, you know, in those moments.
Well, the fact that our debt service per capita from general government funds, sort of right in the middle, indicates that really is taken into account the fact that the enterprise debt is being paid for by revenues. I'm reading that correctly.
Yes, and just if those of you that have been on the committee for a while, we actually did an audit, a separate audit, to look at the billings that Richmond City does with Chesterfield and Rico on the regional water billings and those contracts. And that information is out there on the web from that audit. Did a couple years ago now.
Yeah, I'm just looking at when I look at the graphs, I kind of get them, you know, right below that, just to be sure that we're exercising.
And the report does note that as well.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Thank you very much, Carl. Next item on the agenda is the Inspector General update. Jim Asuna, are you on the line?
Mr. Schooner isn't available, so I've been tasked with this,
Thank you.
business. Since the last audit committee meeting, we had 16 open cases. We closed 2 cases substantiated. We had 4 cases closed unsubstantiated, and 1 case that was inconclusive, being that the employee left before we can actually complete the investigation. We had 2 cases that we referred to other agencies, one being out in Henrico, the other one being to DSS because of their welfare fraud allegation. We had 7 new cases since the last meeting, and we still have that 1 case that's being worked with the federal authorities.
Questions or comments? Thank you very much. Okay, under old business, move the 23 audit plan status.
Yes, sir. You can see by the graphic that Brett's pulling up. Obviously, the ones in green are completed. We are in process on about 6, 7 different projects, including the external audit support that Greg mentioned earlier. The annual follow-up process, that will be brought to you in December, where we follow up on all open audit recommendations. I believe we have a couple hundred this year, from the prior year, and we added another 100. We're always adding and taking off. The procurement contract administration audit is winding down. We are almost done with the field work, so we plan to have that for the audit committee in December. And we are getting going on DPU billing and collections, the meals tax, and CIP maintenance funds. This is a process, school CIP maintenance funds, where the school board sends down a packet of financial information that then gets coded into the financial system. And there were some challenges in that reconciliation about 4 years ago, 5 years ago. So we were asked to put that on the audit plan to see how that is doing. We do have the non-audit service that's really Sabrina is taking more of a lead on in terms of that with the ambulance authority and the contractor. That has started, and I would imagine it would be wrapped up by the time the audit committee meets again, or close to being wrapped up for the ambulance authority. We certainly hope to, if we can stay fully staffed now, to make a good slug at everything that's on here, and turn a few more of these green by December, and a few more of the ones that are red get going on them for sure. So.
Thank you, Rick. Questions or comments for Ms. Velasquez? Okay.
Before we turn this over to the closed session, I really want to thank the team. It's continued to work hard, even though we've had vacancies, and continue to make good progress. I'm very blessed to have a good team of folks behind me.
One other item on old business. This is a follow-up to our discussion at the last meeting relating to the finding on internal controls related to miscellaneous vendors. Ms. White, do you have anything to report to the committee?
I do. Just that since our last meeting in June, we were talking about bundling work and getting items work on. That work has been approved. And miscellaneous vendors was a part of that bundle too. It's rolling out over the course of the next 2 quarters. So there'll be a part of it that'll roll out this quarter and a part that'll roll out in the last quarter of this year. The fix that's going to address with miscellaneous vendors has to do with employees being enrolled as suppliers for reimbursement purposes. We're going to implement a module for ERP called iExpense. So we'll no longer need to use or enroll employees as vendors or suppliers, so that they can just go through a normal reimbursement process. So we're making iterative improvement in that area that's going to help to reduce the number of miscellaneous vendors. there's still more work to be done there, but we have not planned out, the rest of the work around miscellaneous vendors, so we can continue to upgrade this group on it, but we expect that we'll see some benefit from this, current bundle. The next bundle we're looking at is bundle 3. And so we will be on the bundle 2 into this year. Bundle 3, we still need to be disappearing any degree on the work that's gonna go into that, but I expect that this one is going to be.
Have you had any discussions with the external auditor about what you're doing and whether it's moving in the direction of meeting their concerns?
Have not discussed that in person with them, really been focused very much on getting the single audit out the door, but we'll definitely circle around on it.
Thank you, we appreciate it. Okay, is there any further business for the open session of the audit committee? All right, that being the case, I would move that the audit committee go into a closed meeting, pursuant to section 2.2 hyphen 3711A 19 of the Code of Virginia, to discuss cybersecurity assessments and security plans and measures of the city information technology system. Because discussion of such information in an open meeting would jeopardize the city's information technology systems. Is there a second to that motion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we need to move into a closed session.
Hello?
Hello? Okay.
again, you're back out of the chat session. Electronically. Yes, I just in case, we want to follow the letter of the law.
Yes, sir. I move that we hereby end the closed meeting, certify that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by the audit committee. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
All in favor?
I think we need to individually poll the members. So, I'm sorry, but Mr. Cowles, I think, is online. Maybe
Cowles.
I agree.
Aye.
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 Sorry to be so particular.
Thank you. I didn't realize we need to do it that way.
The lawyers won't get that. Make sure I do it.
All right, so we're now back in an open meeting,
Yes, sir.
and unless I hear any objections, the meeting is adjourned. And thank you very much all for being here.
I just want to thank our staff, both the administration and our staff in terms of the overall update and your due diligence, and just being vigilant about these issues that we have to focus on. In terms of risk vulnerability mitigation.
We will see you after Thanksgiving, but before Christmas.
In December.
In December, yes, sir. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good job.
All right, get all those back.
I don't know where it is. It's the Brady Bunch all
Take care.
See everybody.
See you.
I guess we'll see each other again in